everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our session on filling AI literacy gaps with video design workshops. My name is Jessica Cole. I'm a senior education specialist at the Mayo Clinic School of Continuous Development, and we will be having 4 speakers today, so I'd like to have my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Alexis Klassen, and I am also a senior education specialist.
Hi, everyone. I am Zach Lundquist and also a senior education specialist.
Hello, I'm Adria Hoffman and also a senior education specialist in the Mayo Clinic School of Continuous Professional Development. Nice to be here.
All right, so to kick things off, we're going to start with a quick write brainstorming activity. The ideas you generate during this activity will help to set the stage for the discussions throughout the workshop. For this quick write activity, you can see the writing prompts related to AI and video technology on the screen, which I'll read out loud for you. Question number 1 is, when you think of AI and video design, what comes to mind? Question number 2, what can educators do with video using AI technology, or how have you used it? Please go ahead and take a minute to write down your thoughts, ideas, or questions and let your ideas just flow freely. In addition, please post your thoughts in the chat as they come to you. So we'll take that minute now. All right, so thank you so much for taking the time to jot down your thoughts and ideas. Hopefully we'll have some sharing going on in the chat, and please continue to share if you need to. All right, so to make the most of our time together, let's move right into our learning objectives for this session, which are the following: to identify affordances and constraints of AI-powered video design tools, to identify effective multimedia practices for learning, and lastly, to apply an evaluation framework for using AI-powered video design tools. Next, we'll be hearing from Adria, who will be providing background information for the workshop.
Thanks so much, Alexis. So before I do anything else, let's take a couple steps back. This all started from a needs assessment. Like many organizations, there's lots of buzz right now around AI and how we should be using it and if we should be using it and encouragement to use it. And we wanted to first identify what it is that people already knew and what they needed to know to effectively use it in their work in education. So we started with a needs assessment. And we drew on Chanadol's 5-step programmatic approach to respond to CPD needs. The first being a competitive analysis. So we, as a team, scoped all of the tools available to us within our own institution, as well as tools available more broadly. We conducted a literature review with thematic analysis. And then we asked stakeholders, meaning we conducted focus groups and interviews. And then created an internal review by experts. Now, our project didn't include that last step of mapping a curriculum. We really focused on the discovery phase, meaning that competitive analysis and literature review, and then a convergence phase, meaning our focus groups and interviews and internal review. And here's the interesting thing. We said that we scoped all of the tools available to us. And in these focus groups and interviews, we asked faculty, staff, and leaders what tools, what AI technologies they have available. And it came to light very quickly that most folks were unaware of some of the very common integrations or features that are AI powered within the tools that we use. And so we decided to address this and created a video-based presentation and workshop for our colleagues across the School of Continuous Professional Development. So what we're going to be sharing today is a little bit behind the scenes. How did we do it? What did we learn from it? And where are we going? So let's first go back a quick step and talk about AI technologies. And I use this term really intentionally. I draw on the Aspen Institute, their Aspen Digital team has defined AI technologies quite clearly. They're really helpful at describing it as an umbrella term because there's not one AI thing. And we may, in fact, be doing ourselves a disservice by talking about AI as one thing. So there are multiple technologies. At the core, they all are quantitative tools. They calculate predictions by finding patterns. That's all they are. They're pattern detection, really complex pattern detection. So they're using patterns to find things. For instance, ChatGPT that we all hear about all of the time. How does it write? It writes by finding the most probable or phrase or word or something that will go with the previous phrase or word based on all of the data it was trained on. It can do things that are efficient and faster, but we also have to ask, is efficiency and faster better if there's flaws in the thing we're trying to do? So we might be scaling something up that is inherently flawed, or we could be making our work lives more productive. We also need to consider domain expertise. If we're asking a machine to compute an output, which is essentially what an AI tool does, or asking it to compute an output, if it's something we're not familiar with, then we need to partner with somebody who has that domain expertise to make sure that that output is of high quality. In sum, anytime we use a tool, we need to ask what are its affordances and constraints, because a lot of these tools are very shiny and new and therefore exciting, but we might just be doing lower quality things faster. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague to continue. Jessica?
Thank you so much, Adria. So we do have a couple of AI videos to share with you today, and the tool that we used was Powtoon. That is one that we have licensed for ourselves. And so what we want to do is give you a couple of frameworks to think about as you watch this and assess the video on your end. And so to get started, probably most of you are familiar with Mayer's multimedia principles. And of course, as educators, we have a shared goal to maximize learning outcomes. So we want to be intentional about how multimedia is designed so that people can learn from it. And so with this, it's a good time to refresh ourselves on some of these best practices when designing multimedia. And so before we show you the initial AI generated video, we're going to quickly review these. The multimedia principle itself is, of course, that people learn better from words and pictures together than they do from words on their own. And to take that just a step further with the modality principle, that's people learn better from narration and pictures than they do from seeing the visuals and needing to read on screen text. So narration is still a very wonderful thing. The next two principles are personalization and voice. They are two separate ones, but sort of related for our purposes today. With personalization, it's been found people learn better from a friendly human voice. I'm sorry, I swapped those around. Forgive me. Personalization would be more about using the conversational tone as opposed to a more formal tone. But of course, you do want to keep your audience of learners in mind always. And then that voice principle is around learning better from a human voice than from a machine voice. These next three won't apply to the videos we're showing today, but I'd like to include them as well. The image principle, if you're familiar with this, it's sometimes been a little bit of a hot topic, but people do not necessarily learn better when the speaker's image is included on the screen in a video. And segmenting, of course, instructional designers often refer to this as chunking. People learn better from shorter lessons than they do from one long continuous lesson. And final one to point out here before I move on to our next slide is pre-training, which is to maximize what people will learn from a multimedia presentation. It's best to introduce some of those key terms and concepts beforehand. The next set of the remaining principles that we'll talk about are those that are tied to reducing extraneous processing. So because learners have a limited ability of what they can process at once between visual and verbal or words, language at one time, these are really good to keep in mind. Beginning with temporal contiguity. People learn better when corresponding words and pictures are presented at the same time as opposed to one after the other. Related to this is spatial contiguity, which is that people will learn better from corresponding words and pictures that are near to each other on the screen. The coherence principle, this one is really important. People do learn better when extraneous words, pictures, and even sounds are excluded. So it's best to keep materials aligned with the learning objectives and cut the fluff. Really be very intentional about what is being included, thinking of cognitive load of learners. Signaling, this one we see all of the time. That is the use of cues to kind of direct people where to look, show them how things are organized. They will learn better when they have a little help with that on the screen. And finally, the redundancy principle, which I am violating right now because I am showing you visuals and I'm talking to you and showing it on the screen, but we just wanted to review these quickly. We are going to place them in the chat for you as well. The redundancy principle is all about, if you think back to how people learn best from narration and pictures that are shown together, it is not a good idea then to also have words on the screen. So having visuals and narration is wonderful, really good for learning, but people do not learn as well if you add a third element to that and include words on the screen in addition to that. Okay, and Alexis, if you'd be so kind as to paste those multimedia principles in the chat. There are 12 in total. There are 9 that we're going to ask you to think about. And so this video that we'll be displaying for you was created from a very simple prompt, and I'm going to share that with you as well. The prompt was, create a video with instructions for making cupcakes. We wanted this to be easy. Include ingredients, baking instructions, and how to put frosting on the cupcakes so they are aesthetically pleasing. And this is for an adult audience. So as you watch this, the video is just over 1 minute in length. Be thinking about those multimedia principles and maybe how would you take this initial AI output and modify it to improve it for the learning audience? I'm going to hand it over to Zach.
Thank you, Jess. So as comments come in, we'd be happy to respond to those. So I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Otherwise, we will continue on with another framework to use to evaluate AI outputs. And so we'll jump in. So to evaluate generative AI outputs, a good framework to be using is called the CARE framework. This framework stands for C for clarity, A for accuracy, R for relevance, and E for ethics. And we'll cover a little bit more detail on those here in a second. So first up, we have C for clarity, and that is how easily the output can be understood by the intended audience. So a question to be asking yourself in this framework is there anything or is there something you can modify to make it more clear for the intended audience? So an example that comes to mind is, let's say you're developing a course on medical errors. You want to ensure that the top 5 medical errors are listed prominently at the beginning of the course. This way, learners don't have to search for them, and they're explicitly stated up front at the beginning. So they're very clear objectives, right? Next up, we have A for accuracy, and that's how reliable that information is. Is this specific enough, or does it gloss over the content at a very, very high level, 30,000 foot, right? So the question to ask yourself here is, did you check an additional source to make sure that the claims are accurate? As we well know, generative AI has been known to create some fictitious content, so we want to be checking the accuracy that's produced here. So an example is, you want to make sure that the data is from within the last 3 years, right? It's relevant, it's up to date. And then as educators, we need to verify this content and then also use our content experts if it's a very clinically based content or topic for confirmation that it is accurate information. Next up, we have relevance, and this is how closely the output matches the original intended outcome. So a question to ask yourself when you think about relevance is, how well did the response answer your question? Or does the prompt need to be revised to make the output match your intent? So an example here is, you're developing content for a clinical audience, or are you developing content for a patient audience? The 2 types of terms that you're going to use will be very different based on those 2 audiences, right? Clinically, it'll be much more explicit. Patient, you want to kind of make it more generalized, right? So that's how you want to think about relevance. The last one here is ethics, and that is ensuring the output has respect and integrity for all populations. So a question to ask yourself is, are there any biases or is there any equity concerns in the response that's been generated? So an example to consider is, we work with a lot of international audiences here at Mayo. When we develop content, AI might create some slang terminology that might be specific to the United States or even within a geographical area within the United States. So does that output match an international audience? So you want to adjust that accordingly to make it ethical to all populations. So now that we've covered the CARE framework, we're going to move into another video that has been, it's the same video of making cupcakes, but after we've made some human edits to it. So for example, we updated some of the order of the videos, and we also added a narration with a voiceover AI stand-in. So this time when we watch the video, and think about the CARE framework that we just discussed, and choose one of those framework principles to evaluate and share those in the chat for us. So next, we'll play the video.
Thank you, Zach. This one as well is about 1 minute long.
Welcome to our guide on making delicious cupcakes. The first thing to do is gather the necessary ingredients. For the batter, you will need flour, sugar, and eggs. In a mixing bowl, combine the flour, sugar, and eggs. Mix until you have a smooth batter. Place your cupcake liners in the baking tray. This is essential for even baking. Pour the batter into the cupcake liners. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. Allow the cupcakes to cool completely on a wire rack before adding frosting. Prepare your frosting while the cupcakes cool. Use ingredients like butter, sugar, and milk. Using a piping bag, evenly frost each cupcake. Add sprinkles, candies, or fruits to enhance the visual appeal of your cupcakes. Now enjoy your beautiful and delicious cupcakes. You did a great job.
Thank you, Jess. Feel free to put those comments back in the chat and give us some examples of using the CARE framework to evaluate this AI output. One that first comes to mind, and I'll bring up Relevance. So the clips in the original video, the beginning slide was frosting the cupcake, right? Is that necessarily relevant to the first step in creating a cupcake? Probably not, right? So we wanted to adjust that and move it to a later place where we're actually going to be frosting the cupcakes, right? So that's one example of using the CARE framework to evaluate this AI output.
Thank you, Zach. We're going to turn it back over to Adria.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try to tie this together for us a little bit too. You may have noticed the specificity that we added into that video as well, the specific ingredients that you need at the beginning, the relevance to perhaps the novice baker. So again, knowing all of those things that you know when you're designing effective learning is the same thing that you need to apply when you're using any kind of AI tools. But it gets us started. It can make us more productive. It can give us that starting point for efficiency. It just can't do it all for us because it requires our educational expertise, for example, or domain knowledge in order to use it well. We applied first Mayer's multimedia principles, such as words and pictures and modalities and personalization and voice. And I did want to take a moment to address this as well. There are many tools now, including Powtoon, as you heard, where you can have an AI-generated voice narration, voiceover. And they're great. They're much more efficient than having to record and go through the process ourselves. But depending on the tool you use, it may sound more machine-like or more human-like. So that's another way that you can evaluate your output. We also want to care about our outputs, meaning the clarity, the accuracy, the relevance, and the ethics. And I think particularly in this last piece with ethics, there will be more questions and more considerations as we all learn more about these tools and the tools themselves get better. So we don't have here's exactly what to do in a straightforward manner, like check all the boxes and you're fine. But instead we encourage you to wrestle with these ideas, to consider what it is that you want to do. Maybe it's efficiency and productivity. Maybe it's enhancing the quality of something. Maybe it's using an educational tool in a way that makes more sense for you because you don't have a different tool that can do it. But again, those ethical questions, that relevance, the accuracy and specificity and clarity will continue to be questions and considerations as we consider the constraints and affordances of each tool that we may or may not use in our work. So, who has the first question? It's so quiet.
Just to comment on the comment of AI using a more natural voice for the video, that is absolutely noticed, right? AI does not do a great job of pacing the natural human language or pausing at the right place. So definitely pay attention to that when you're using technology like this. Can a human do it better, right? So always be thinking about that.
I see the question there. How many tries does it take to make a video feel complete? I think that varies widely. We've played as a team with different AI-powered features in this. You can start with a script. You can use it, you can use one kind of AI feature or another or multiple together. And it depends on the length of the video as well. I think what our team has found, but I invite any of my colleagues to jump in here is that playing with it a little bit and just getting a starting point saves you a bit of time. I would say if you're on a really crunch time frame and you can find a really good AI voiceover that sounds nearly human, that in and of itself is really helpful. But I would say that the content is really important to get right, especially in a continuous professional development space, that CME CE space. I'm not sure we can hand that over to AI and expect great results yet.
Yes, I would agree
Go
with
ahead.
Andrea that it takes a few tries, but I would say that it creates a good baseline to start from, and you can build from there, but not necessarily just use the output as it is.
The voiceover tool was actually one of the voiceover tools, the AI features within the Powtoon suite. And again, we used Powtoon because it's available to us. You may notice other brands like Articulate is beginning to roll out more AI features. There's another video-based tool that I think also is Beyond. There's other tools out there, but we used what we have an institutional license for. So that's the Powtoon voiceover. And there are other choices within it. That's just one of the voiceover voices. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we all probably want to take a quick break before our next sessions, but we really appreciate you being here and engaging. Feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you, everyone.